How to start a kayak rental business. That's what you're looking for, right? Welcome to this video review. My name's Brando Linick. Hey there. I can help you out with this, and in this review, alright, sharing with you critical principles and concepts and ideas that you just got to know about this business model. It's going to save you a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm also going to touch base kind of on my experiences with this over the last, I'd say, 4 years, having started a couple different types of businesses, having also gotten around close people who I've known who've started their own boat renting businesses and kayak renting businesses and bike renting businesses. And when it comes to the renting business in general, alright, you got to keep in mind when you're dealing with supplies, when you're dealing with equipment, when you're dealing with employees, when you're dealing with a piece of property that is a business investment, alright, like a kayak, which isn't too hefty, but you're dealing with a kayak, and when you have a person who's renting that out, there's liabilities you got to follow, there's legal obligations you got to follow to cover your own butt. Now, if something happens to that person in your kayak, even if it's on them, you got to keep in mind that makes your business look bad. So there's a lot of precautions you need to take with this business model. Not saying that because of that, if you're not willing to take the risk that you're not going to be able to have a nice successful business. But I will tell you this, dealing with the things associated with the business, the principles behind it, because there's a lot of ways you could approach it. I mean, you could start by buying out from wholesalers, by buying out from manufacturers, kayaks, or you could start out by franchising, alright? And if you are franchising, that's a whole nother conversation for another video, but you have a little bit more leverage for yourself. But it all comes down to the exact same principles. When you're dealing with kayaks, you're dealing with that being your supplies and your initial investment that's going to be making you money. Alright, and depending on how many kayaks that you actually have is going to depend on the amount of money that you're actually going to make. What do I mean by that? If you have 10 kayaks that you start off with, okay, the amount of money that you can make is going to be a little bit higher. Why? Because you're not going to be reliant on 1 or 2 or 3 kayaks. And because of that, you're going to have more people who are going to be able to go out there, and depending on how long a session is, you're going to be able to turn a profit very quickly within a day. So it is a profitable business, but I'm telling you, dealing with kayaks, dealing with your supplies, equipment, employees, okay, the more overhead you have, alright, even if you buy more and more and more kayaks, it's not guaranteeing you money, alright? There's marketing you gotta do, you gotta put yourself out there, alright? You gotta give an irresistible offer, but not all that. You gotta keep in mind the upfront investment to start it, not just the upfront investment, the time that you gotta put into the business to maintain it and run it on an everyday basis. And you also gotta keep in mind that this is a weather permitted business, alright? Which means when it's raining outside, you can't have someone on the lake or wherever it is that they're going to be kayaking. So your business is not going to be in business when it's raining, when it's storming out, which can limit the amount of money that you can make. And this is something you got to keep in mind when it comes to a kayak rental business, all right? And honestly, when it comes to this from a business perspective, remembering your overhead cuts down your profit margins. If you're looking at getting in business because you want to make profit margins, you want to make an income, I would suggest before you consider starting a kayak rental business, based on the review of the business model that we've touched on just briefly and broadly, alright, if you're looking at this to build a business, to build an income, before you consider starting a kayak rental business, if you want to be your own boss, create time, freedom, leverage, and flexibility, if that is really what you're looking for, if you hear me out here for like 40 seconds, I've got a lead I want to throw your way, because my story with this goes back a year ago when I transitioned from a traditional business dealing with supplies and equipment and employees, okay, so my profit margins were a little lower because I had more overhead and my time was cut down, alright, because I had to maintain that overhead. And I didn't like that, I wasn't seeing my family as often, I was working harder than employees, and it wasn't fun to say the least. And I'm not saying that's what you're going to experience, but it's what goes with the territory of owning your own business. Sometimes you're going to work harder than your employees. Sometimes, you're going to be spending more time, in your workplace than you will with your family. And due to that, it wasn't for me. And I started to look for other opportunities, and I came across a person who is building a business, and I share this with you to make an educated decision by the end of this video on how to build a business to get the results that you want, which in this review is really what this whole conversation is about, how to get the results that you want out of business. Came across this person who is building a business online, without supplies, without equipment, without employees, without any of that stuff, making a lot of profit margins. I mean, this person was making a high multiple 6-figure income, more money every single month than I was making in 2 years. Due to that, and because they had the leverage to operate on the internet. It could be raining, it could be storming outside, and they could move and they could operate anywhere they wanted, wherever there's internet connection, and still maintain and grow their business. And it was really cool to me, so I started model and copy them. Less than a month later, created a full-time income business working part-time, and those aren't average or typical results. I had to work my butt off, had to learn things, but you'd have to do that in any business, which is why if you want to build a business, to be your own boss, to create income, to create flexibility, to be able to do what you want when you want, if that's really what you're looking for at the end of the day, learn to build a business on the internet. Learn to use the internet to do the heavy lifting for you, so you don't have to rely on supplies, equipment, weather, employees, alright? Where you can take control of everything and be able to create that dream lifestyle, whether that's traveling around the world, whether that's learning a new language. And obviously I'm not guaranteeing your results here. I'm not talking about getting rich quick. Any business, even on the internet, it does require work. You have to learn some things, but if you're willing to do that, and this makes sense to you from a business perspective, where it can do the heavy lifting for you, where you don't have to reinvent the wheel, okay, and get into tens and thousands of dollars of debt, connect with me on my site. Check it out. It's 123marketingtips.com. If you're willing to put in some work, alright, if you're willing to work your butt off, if you're willing to learn some things, if you're open-minded, check it out and connect with me. It's 123marketingtips.com. The link will be in the description below. I'll personally connect with you from there. And aside from that, I appreciate you. It's been fun, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.